All right, let's get to the Pop-Tarts Bowl. All right. I'm excited for this matchup. Saturday, December 27th, 3:30 ABC. Number 22, Georgia Tech is facing number 12, BYU in Orlando. BYU is a 4.5 point favorite. BYU, of course, both these teams were in the playoff hunt all year. Georgia Tech, I would say, played themselves out of it. BYU, I think they played themselves out in terms of how they lost to Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship, but their only two losses are to Texas Tech,
I know.
and they very much had an argument to get in the playoff, as we know, Mac. And this is pretty crazy. Over the first 2 years of the 12-team format, 6 two-loss power conference teams have missed the playoff. BYU is the only power conference team to finish with 2 regular season losses each of the past 2 seasons and not get in.
Wow.
So, they feel some type of way. And then
Mhm.
for Georgia Tech, they're looking to win 10 games for the first time since 2014 when they won the Orange Bowl, went 11-3. Mac was very familiar with that Georgia Tech team. And there's a lot kind of in flux because Georgia Tech's out here losing coordinators, Buster Faulkner going to Florida. So that's interesting there. But then Brent Key signing his extension. The beauty of a game like this, Mac, is I don't think we're really going to have any opt-outs, which is
Mhm.
exciting.
Mhm. Yeah, it is. And this, I mean, this is a playoff caliber game. I mean, these are two really, really good teams. It's going to be a very fun, game to watch. And just to, I'm sure we don't have any BYU people watching, but just to
Yeah.
address that,
Mhm.
I do think it's a shame. I do think it's unfortunate that you can literally lose to a team that could and might win a national championship. And unfortunately, you played them twice. And the way you lost, you did get beat down by them.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're not in
When you
with
were
2
in
off,
before the game,
yeah,
that's the
it
problem.
stinks. It stinks. And I think it's a brutal, kind of piece of this. And again, I don't think Alabama should have been in this thing at all. I think that's crazy. I think there's too good of a relationship or too important of a relationship for the SEC runner up to not be in. I think that's outrageous. I think it's outrageous. So anyway, that's kind of, that
Agreed.
this is going to be a physical game. It's going to be a really physical game. It's going to be a really interesting game. Two teams that want to run the heck out of the football. I
Mhm.
mean, you look at LJ Martin from BYU. That dude has 30 or 1,300 yards. I mean, he is a
Yeah.
sledgehammer. He is an absolute weapon. Bear Bachmeyer has been fantastic, the true freshman. Hate his number. I think it's the ugliest thing ever. I'm sure there's a story behind it. Don't mean to be disrespectful. You got to change that next year. I'm sick of looking at that throw the football. And then you got Haynes King, who, again, I assume and hope is, going to be playing his last football game. Mr. Do It All, one of the greatest, Yellow Jackets I've ever covered and watched, put a nice little cherry on top of his career, finished top 10 in the Heisman, voting, which I thought was awesome. And, if it wasn't for those last 2 games, he probably would have been in New York, probably would have finished higher,
Mhm.
than he did. But Mr. Do It All, for this team. The most interesting piece of this game to me is the lack of coaches for Georgia
Right.
Tech. Like you use Buster Faulkner. I believe you're losing a couple of other coaches that
Yeah.
maybe are either going to Florida, going to other places. So who's available? Who's calling the game? Who's going to be doing all that? At the end of the day, Coach Key's still there, and I think that's the most important thing. I mean, you talk about a team fully embracing the identity of somebody. That is still a very important thing, and just the physical nature of this. I mean, this is going to be a slugfest, heavyweight, really fun matchup, and I could see both these offenses just marching up and down the field.
Well, Georgia Tech, that has happened to them a few times this year. But I mean, they're coming off a really good performance defensively against Georgia. Offensively, not so much, but it was Georgia. BYU, as we alluded to, coming off a beatdown against a very, very good Texas Tech team. But Bear Bachmeyer in that game was 16 of 27 for 115 and 2 picks.
And he
So,
got hurt too. He
yeah,
hurt his foot
but
early
they
in that game, and he was a different guy.
true. But I was reading, updates on him. Apparently, he's good. He's going to
Yeah.
play.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
BYU doesn't have really any opt-outs that are important, and Georgia Tech doesn't either. And that's what's fun. Like for a Pop-Tarts Bowl, and I'm sure the Pop-Tarts Bowl was excited to get these teams because both
Yeah.
these teams have a lot to gain from this game.
Right?
It's not like a Notre Dame, we don't want to play situation. BYU with Kalani Sitake saying, I'm staying here. I want to be here, even though he's getting interest elsewhere. And when they announced his contract extension, BYU was saying, we're also giving him a raise. We're going to look at more revenue sharing, NIL, because you lose to Texas Tech twice, the team that has a $7 million defensive line. So
Right.
they realize, I think that says a lot, the investment that BYU is getting. So this game matters, right? You don't want to say, okay, we're getting all this investment and we're going to go lay an egg. So I think
Right.
that's big for BYU. for Georgia Tech, same thing. They just invested in Brent Key, extended him. And of course, Brent Key's out here interviewing offensive coordinators. So I think that's going to be a weird, distraction, I guess. Probably not for Brent Key. But point is, I'm excited for this game because I think it really means a lot to
Yeah.
both programs. And for Haynes King, like you said, his last go around, I mean, he'll die on the field if, to win the Pop-Tarts Bowl, of
Right.
course.
Right. No question. No question. And, I think, how important it is to get to double digit wins for Georgia Tech. I mean,
Right.
to finish the season 10-3, that's historic. That's unbelievable. And for BYU to be going after 12. I mean, those, 10 and 12 are two huge numbers. Like that means a lot to be able to accomplish, those type of things. And that's why this game is so exciting, because it does matter. And the Pop-Tarts Bowl, I mean, those people do a great job. It's going to be fun. It'll be a lot of cool things going on. The mascot, I think there's like 6 live mascots now, and maybe 6 different tastings after. So you want to do
Oh,
that. You want to win the game to eat that Pop-Tart on the field. I'm a big Pop-Tart guy, actually. I'm in for that.
interesting, Mac.
Yeah.
Huh. That surprises me a little bit
Well, there's
because
protein Pop-Tarts now, so you can
there
get a little
are.
juice. Oh yeah. Yeah, he'll be there too. He's jacked up. He looks good.
Stop it. Okay, that's outrageous. When we look at keys for this game, we talked about Georgia Tech's offense just struggling against Georgia. It is Georgia, but we also talked about Georgia's defense hadn't been great all season long. What I know Georgia Tech run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. Haynes King do everything. They've had some injuries. They haven't, they've struggled a little bit down the stretch, but I still feel like this is an offense with some time to get healthier that
Mhm.
can look good in this game against BYU. And they're going to need it because, like you said, the way BYU runs the ball, you can't let BYU control the clock and control this game that way.
100%. I mean, that's what each team's going to want to do. So
Oh,
this might be a very fast game, if they're both running the ball effectively. I think the key for Georgia Tech is, how do you limit that? How can you really, kind of learn from the Georgia game where they could have ran it as much as they wanted.
right.
Yet overall, it just felt like your defense took a step forward. How can you harness that? Use that in this type of game, because BYU, if they can, and they will run the ball a ton too. Again, I mentioned LJ Martin, how good of a player he is, and Bear can use his legs to pick up things if he's healthy as well there. And then just offensively, be who you are, do what you do. Kind of have a bad taste in your mouth right now the last couple of weeks to finish the season. How do you go out on a high note? How can Haynes King truly be that guy? And as I mentioned, one of the best to ever do it.
It worries me, Mac. Let's just get real about this game. It worries me that Buster Faulkner is gone
As
because
it should, as it should.
he's been kind of the offensive genius,
Yeah.
with Georgia Tech, and a lot of people were wanting him, going after him in this cycle, and Florida, I think, that's a good hire for them. So, that concerns me a lot, and
Yeah.
then Georgia Tech, just the offense not looking great even with Faulkner against Georgia. And BYU, my first thought when I saw this game was, "Oh, Georgia Tech's gonna be more motivated." But I don't think that's right anymore. I think BYU
Mhm.
wants to prove a point
Yeah.
with this game and continue their momentum going into next season with Bachmeier being such a young player and the investment they're getting. I hate to do it, Mac, but I think BYU's gonna win this game. I think BYU's gonna cover the
Yeah.
4.5.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that there's some interesting things stacking up against the Yellow Jackets, just again with those coaching things. What does it look like? Now, the interesting thing about all of this, KG, is I dealt with this situation in 2014 where Chad Morris got hired and was going to SMU to be their head coach. And we had first time play callers in this game. We scored 40 points. We lit it up the scoreboard. So there is something to a fresh start, fresh eyes, just talking to your quick Haynes, what do you like? It's not about the system. It's not about what I do. Haynes, what do you want to run? And listen, he's old enough to just let him call it. Let him call the whole game in the helmet on the field. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, let's go. This is what I see. This is what I'm rolling with. Tell me
I
what
love
coverage
that.
you see up top, and then let's go to work. Why not? Grandpa Haynes can handle that. He can do that. But you're right. There's something to it. I am interested. I will not be surprised if Georgia Tech wins this game. But I
Mm.
think there's a little bit more, like you said, for BYU. I think they might get it done.
Well, and Haynes King wants to be a coach, right? So here you go, bud.
Good audition. Maybe
Here you
he
go.
internal hire, quarterback to coordinator. Have we ever
Wow.
seen that? I don't know.
Not that quickly, right? Well, and there is the whole Aaron Philo of it all, right? And we're gonna Haynes King's gonna play, like, I get that. There's no reason he shouldn't. He deserves to have this chance to finish his career.
Did you know that Ingles sells more organics than any other store? Or that they run their own dairy? Or that they only serve USDA choice and prime meat? Did you know that they have more local craft beer than any place else? Or that they have Energy Smart stores? Or that they professionally slice and package imported cheese from Europe? Did you know about their giant international aisle, local farm partnerships, curbside pickup, wine department, or that they donate 3,956 meals a day to local food banks? Well, now you do. It's all in the bag. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
All right, guys, we're welcomed by another Kelly. Kelly, great to see you. Thank you for joining us today to talk all things Jackets. We were kind of joking right before we hit record there that there's just a couple of things kind of going on in the flats right now. So we had to get you on, man. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Happy to come on.
Yeah, we appreciate you, man. So let's kind of start with just all the changes. Like, if it's not going to take 2 hours, can you kind of list off everything that is kind of changing and that maybe has happened in the last week there for the Yellow Jackets?
So you had Buster Faulkner leave to go to Florida, the offensive coordinator. He took basically all of the grad assistant, QA guys, the analyst guys, the off the field, which makes sense because those people don't know they're going to be retained by the next offensive coordinator. Those are the most transient people. Now there's a few that stayed, but quite a few of them went. Trent McKnight was supposed to leave and then decided to stay, and he's still at Tech now, the wide receivers coach. You had Aaron Philo go in the portal, the backup quarterback who started the Gardner Webb game and has played some the last 2 years for them. And then you had sometimes starting center Olo Tuapola go into the portal. And I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that went in. Ben Galloway, backup offensive lineman. So yeah, that's been just the last 7 to 10 days or whatever.
It's wild. And I know the calendar in college football is just flat out stupid, that we're having to deal with this. And you wonder why people don't think bowl games matter. It's because you got to deal with all of this. So coaches have to pick at some point. Let's talk big picture here, Kelly, with Aaron Philo, because this is someone that Tech wanted to keep around. They paid him enough to keep around to back up Haynes King. Didn't need him as much this year because Haynes King was able to stay healthy, for the most part. But did this shock you? Like, walk us through kind of your thought process of when you heard this, and maybe where does Tech go from here?
So Buster Faulkner and Aaron Philo are extremely close. Buster has a son named Harrison who's about to start at Georgia Southern as a true freshman. He's coming in their 2026 class. Harrison and Aaron worked out together and have for a long time. So there's a close relationship there that predates even Buster coming to Georgia Tech when they were like kids. And Aaron and Buster are very close. Obviously Chris Winke's the quarterback's coach, but Buster was the OC. And Buster loves Aaron, and they're very close. And when Buster left, he took Aaron with him. That was one of the things I think everybody thought, that Buster would stay and Aaron would get a year to play quarterback, and then you kind of reevaluate, which you're seeing a lot of teams do right now, where a guy has a good year, and then they test the portal to see what they're worth. Florida, on the back of Buster's interest in Aaron, has made a pretty aggressive offer behind the scenes, and then they got him to go into the portal to see his value. That's my expectation. He ends up there. They offered him, Georgia Tech matched the offer, and he wanted to go with Buster, who's sort of groomed him to be his future quarterback in his offense. And the thing is, Aaron will have a leg up over everyone in Florida because he knows the offense, he's got 2 years now in the system. So the idea that he could jump in there and start, I guess, is very appealing. The thing with John Summerall is he's going to bring in 3 quarterbacks to compete. That's what he did at Tulane. So they're being active. They're recruiting Colt Joseph from Old Dominion. They're recruiting some other guys who aren't even in the portal yet. I think like Chandler Morris at Virginia, I've heard his name connected to it. Like, this is a wild business, and it's all going on behind the scenes through agents and other things, so you can get around tampering, which doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah, the good old quarterback underground discussions of free agency with like you said, there's no rules, there's no ramifications, there's no punishment, there's no consequence. Just go get a guy, tell him you want him, and tell him you'll give him how much money, and see if he'll come. I mean, it is a crazy world in which we live right here, and the fact that all these guys, and this is obviously we're talking about Aaron. It's not personal to him. This is a lot of people in this situation that are getting in the portal. The portal doesn't open for a month. You're
Yep.
quitting. You're just leaving. You're not in a portal. You're not in anything. Right now. That's what's so weird to me about this whole process, and what I think is so frustrating, because literally it should be illegal. There should be consequences for these guys committing that have already like, what are you talking about? None of that's allowed right now, and yet there's nothing. And so I certainly think there's a need for that. I was going to kind of jump into the Florida discussion, but no one watching this cares about that. I think they're kind
Well,
of frustrated and things of that nature. I guess the bigger overarching picture is what's next for Georgia Tech. You lose Haynes King, who is obviously one of the best to ever do it. You lose the heir apparent that you paid allegedly $1 million to keep and to sit and not get hurt. And now you got nothing. So do they have to go and get somebody? Is there somebody on the roster that we don't know about that you feel good about stepping in? What's the QB situation there for them now?
so it's interesting. I did like a whole breakdown yesterday on my site about the ACC quarterback situations. And if you look at it, there were three homegrown guys that signed out of high school in the league. You had Jennings, Klubnik, and CJ Bailey, right? Bailey's supposed to be going in the portal. The other two guys were locked in, or I guess Klubnik's out of time anyways. And then you had the dude at Cal that transferred from Oregon, but he'd signed at Oregon, and then transferred very quickly to Cal. So no one in the league has homegrown quarterbacks. It's one of those weird things. Like, I think that they're going to go get a guy who's played some, whether it's a guy that's a starter. And I heard everything from DJ Lagway to, Cole Joseph, the guy from Old Dominion, whoever. They're going to go get one of those guys. You have Graham Knowles, who's been the third quarterback the last few years. Grady Adamson, who's going to be a redshirt freshman next year. They love that kid. He can spin it. He runs the ball well. He actually is the most like Haynes King of the other quarterbacks. And then Cole Bergeron just signed. He was committed to Virginia Tech forever. And when they had the coaching change, he decommitted and then committed to Georgia Tech, who was his number 2 school over the summer. So, yeah, it's weird. And, a lot of this rides on the offensive coordinator thing, too. They still haven't announced an offensive coordinator. Brent said he's not going to announce it until after the bowl game. He says he's told me he has his mind made up on what he's doing. But, like, what is that? They interviewed Chip Kelly. They interviewed Corey Dennis, who's a former player as a UNLV OC. He's interviewed a ton of guys on Zoom and stuff. Who's the offensive coordinator? What does that system look like? How much of it is an adjustment from what they were doing? We know they're going to want to run the football, right? So it's not going to be full Mike Leach air raid. But what does all that look like? I don't know. And they got to go. You got to be in protection mode now too, because people are trying to get Isaiah Canyon. People are trying to get other players on the team of value, and that's the world we live in, right? Like, and it stinks for everybody, and every coach is pissed. And it doesn't matter if you're Alabama, you're getting poached. Georgia, Florida, Auburn. Go look at how many guys from Auburn are in the portal today, or
Wow.
announce they're going in. Like, it's crazy.
This is great info, Kelly. This is great stuff. And yeah, I guess there's a reason why coaches are paid so much, because this sounds like the worst job in the world. But okay, so let's stay with the offense for just a second, and then let's talk some defense, because obviously some things need to be fixed there, and maybe you can take a step forward in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. But from an offensive standpoint, I believe I saw Brent Key saying Chris Winkie would call plays. Does he have a shot at the OC job? And then can you also confirm for me, is Haynes King playing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, please?
Yeah, Haynes is playing.
Great.
I
don't know anything anymore. It's wild out here.
No, he's very excited about getting a chance at his 10th win and finishing great. He took a little bit of a veiled shot at Philo yesterday in his media presser, just about how you got to finish the drill and do your job. And he felt like not everybody was finishing the drill with their season. Winkie's going to call plays in the bowl game. I was told from the jump that he was not a realistic offensive coordinator candidate, but things can change once Brent's getting 2-3 weeks of watching him every day. Maybe that changes things up. I don't know. I know he's very loyal. Chris is the lone offensive holdover from the transition year, because he was there in 2022 and Jeff was still there, and Jeff Collins, and stayed because he really believed in him. And and Chris has been kind of his rock guy on his offensive side of the staff. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. That's a really interesting dynamic. I'm curious how Chris calls it too. Like, what does that look like? A former NFL quarterback, a Heisman guy, like he's got all the pedigree. Can he put together a cool game plan? That's gonna be a whole other interesting aspect of this.
Yeah, it really will. And just, I mean, even to take it, a further step away, just what will Georgia Tech look like next year? Just game plan wise, personnel wise, who's your quarterback, who's your OC, what's your game plan? Is it going to be, more of a air it out, or are they going to stay ground and pound because of their head coach? I'm really fascinated just where all this ends up and what it all looks like. Let's talk about this game because it is a nice game and it's a really fun matchup, a potential, playoff caliber. If, both these teams just win maybe one more game, maybe they both are in this thing. Who knows what, that really looks like for them. What's your overarching, kind of feel and grasp on this matchup going into it?
BYU is a tough team. This is, their 2 losses are to Texas Tech, like who's, a playoff team. These are basically the next best teams that didn't make the playoffs that are playing in a bowl game. If you take Notre Dame out of it because they're not playing, like this is sort of the next. These would be like teams if you were in a 16 or 2018 playoff that would be in both. So I think there's both of them have big chips on their shoulders. Sataki's teams are really physical. They're the classic BYU teams. They can pound you. They play good defense. They have a quarterback who wears number 47 and is like just kind of a freaky athlete guy that's tough as nails, like a Haynes King, but he's only a freshman and Bear. I think it's a fun matchup. Haynes King's to be fired up. All the key guys are expected to play. Like no one's holding out. No one's, Jamal Haynes is practicing. Isaiah Canyon's still with the team practicing. All the guys that people would wonder about, Haynes, all of them, Amari Harvey, all of those guys have been out practicing with the team. So I think they want to finish. They want to get to 10 wins. That's rarely happened at Georgia Tech, especially over the last decade and a half of kind of rough waters. I think everyone wants to go out with a big win. They've lost to BYU the last couple of times they played them too when Paul was here. So I think there's incentive there. And then they're in sort of the premiere of what's left of the bowl games, right? Like they're playing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Everybody loves the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Like it's a fun they have figured out viral marketing and how to make it a fun game. And everyone wants to see like the Pop-Tart go in the giant toaster and all that. And I think, I'm excited to see like what it's like to go to one of these games. It's been a while. So, it's not the Rose Bowl, it's not the Sugar Bowl or whatever, but it's still really cool.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best matchups outside of the playoff, maybe the best, no doubt about it. And I'm glad I had to ask just to clarify because this is this world. But I mean, there's no way Haynes King wasn't going to play. I think we know that. Good to hear about the rest of those guys as well. From a defensive standpoint, by the way, JacketsOnline, you do an awesome job. So if you're a Georgia Tech fan, check that out. Anybody, check it out. I was reading some of your stuff. You were talking about defensively, maybe bringing in someone to help Blake Gideon. We know he's so young. I mean, he's a guy I grew up watching at Texas. He's not that old. So what do you think is the next step for this defense and kind of taking for year 2 in Blake Gideon and maybe building off of this Pop-Tarts Bowl?
Yeah, I think that they were probably playing too soft early in the season, less aggressive. Guys were getting flat-footed and not attacking the ball and not attacking and being scared to give up explosives. And then you get in that mindset, and then you look at a lot of the explosives they gave up. Somebody's out of position because they followed with their eyes the wrong thing, the guy in motion or whatever, and you get switched and you're not in the right spot. That's where the ball goes. And they struggled setting the edge and getting pressure, and that when you can't set the edge, it just screws your whole defense up because it messes up your run defense. You get an inability to rush the passer or push the pocket, allows the quarterback to escape easily. All of those things kind of compounded on them all year. And they need to reload on defense. They need 4 defensive tackles in the portal. They need a linebacker. Like they have some big holes to fill, but Brent has a lot of money. And they announced today they raised like $10 million and more cash for athletics from 2 new gifts. He's been putting together a war chest to go after what he thinks he needs to win. And they got a tough schedule next year. You got to play Tennessee and Colorado in the first 3 weeks of the season. Now those games are at home, but that's Tennessee and Colorado. Who knows who's on that team? Like they're the portal kings. So like, you know, I think it's going to be real interesting to see how this all plays out. The bowl game hopefully will be a reflection of how they played in the Georgia game defensively, where they're more aggressive, attacking. And that's what Brent wants. And that's what was the frustration with Blake. You get a guy who's never been a DC before. It's tough. So I think they'll bring in an older guy to kind of mentor Blake and help him through some of those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see, man. You talk about that money. You got a lot of money coming here in about a month. It's just going to be, go get a guy, go get somebody or a couple of guys. We'll see. It'll be really interesting. Just big picture, I guess. And you kind of just answered it there. But in this type of game, the opportunity for double-digit wins and, everything Haynes King has done, everything that Coach Key has done as a player and now as a coach. What, I guess, can this just signal for Georgia Tech, for this fan base, for the future of the Yellow Jackets?
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of, I think it was Joe Hamilton's senior year. And they were, on the cusp of being good and didn't quite have the defense that year either. And they ended up finishing strong, and that kind of set them up for a big season the next year. I think it was an opportunity to send Haynes out with the 10th win, ACC Player of the Year, to show everybody that what happened in November was in November, and this team didn't pack it in, right. Like you had the 3 losses in games where you had a chance to win, and shot yourselves in the foot in several of those. So like I think the opportunity is there. The difference between that and 6 wins and 7-6 and all the stuff they've been doing, this is an opportunity to show you've leveled up. You're a level up, and that will attract kids to come here, I think, too. If you can show them, hey, we won 10 games, maybe they see Player of the Year. He was a portal guy, by the way, from Texas A&M. Stayed at Tech for 3 years. I think you got an opportunity to have something really good to sell to both fans and to guys in the portal come January 1st.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. It'll be interesting to see. Well, it's great talking with you. Thank you so much for your time. This is great insight, man. We'd love to have you back January, February, just to talk more about these Jackets. And maybe we have some answers and we can start looking ahead a little bit. Thank you, brother.
Fingers crossed, guys. Thank you so much for having us on.
Rhoback just dropped their licensed game day collection. Polos, hoodies, Q-zips, custom designed for your school. On game days, we wear Rhoback, period.